now we can start. Okay, a very warm welcome to AGENET's second webinar in the 2023 webinar series, which is titled Imaginations of Emerging Technology and Data in the Future of Senior Living. My name is Svetlana Torno, and together with Simone Felding, who's present today too, and Francesco Diodati, I am a co-convener of the Age and Generations Network. This webinar is jointly organized by AGENET and the Network of Socio-Gerontechnology. And I would like to thank my colleague Simone Felding for taking the lead of organizing this webinar and inviting the speakers. So a little bit about the two networks, because I assume that we are joined by two different communities today. So the Age and Generations Network is a network of the European Association of Social Anthropologists, which brings together scholars who work on aging, generations, and life course-related topics. The Socio-Gerontechnology Network unites scholars from various social science and design disciplines interested in critical studies of aging and technology. The network aim is to provide critical insights into aging and technology that should improve policies in design for older people in a digitalized world. So both networks organize online and in-person events, about which you can find out following the links that Simone is to their websites that Simone is currently posting in the chat. And I would like to here mention only the upcoming annual meeting of the Socio-Gerontechnology Network, which is taking place in late September in Utrecht, for which it is still possible to register. And AGENET plans a biennial members conference in March 2024 in Venice, and we will publish the call for papers in early September. So stay tuned to our channels to find out more and then to apply. Okay. And today's webinar focuses on emerging technologies and data in eldercare and senior living that are envisioned by different players as solution to aging societies. We will hear examples of smart homes technologies, social robots, and data-driven services in health and long-term care. These technological solutions are at different stage of development and implementation at the moment. And throughout this event, I think we will have the possibility of interesting comparisons and discussions about these technologies. So to discuss this exciting topic, we are joined by three early career researchers today, and who are all at different stages in their PhD, from still going through the research phase or about to finish their PhDs. And I will introduce our speakers in the speech order. So we have with us today Simone Anna Felding, who is a social anthropologist doing her PhD at the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases at Witten, which is part of the Marie Curie Innovative Training Network Distinct. Her PhD looks at the use of pet robots in nursing homes for people with dementia. She is the co-convener of AGENET and is also part of the Socio-Gerontologist Network Events Committee. So then we have with us today Michaela Hellstrand, who is a PhD candidate at the Division of Health and Informatics and Logistics at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Her PhD focuses on the use of health data within eldercare and how it affects everyday care practices and the quality of care. Her background is in social anthropology and sociology. And our last third speaker is Miguel Gomez Hernandez, who is a PhD candidate at the Emerging Technologies Research Lab at the Monash University in Australia. His PhD focuses on possible future scenarios of smart home living for older people as imagined by older adults, industry, and governments. He holds a Master of Science in Techno-Anthropology and a dual BA in Sociology and Political Science. So a last note on the webinar structure. So at the beginning, we will hear around 10 minutes of presentation by each of the speakers, which will be followed by a short pause of 5 minutes for comprehension-related questions. And to make this webinar more interactive, the speakers prepared 4 discussion questions, which the webinar participants are invited to discuss in breakout rooms. And we just have to check, are we still, oh yeah, I think we are joined by many people. So we do the breakout rooms at the end. And we reserved 15 minutes for the discussion within the breakout rooms, which will be facilitated by our speakers. And at the end, we will come together for a final discussion and a Q&A. So if you have bigger questions, please keep them reserved to the final discussion. And also during the breakout rooms, we will stop the recording and then resume it after we come back together. So this is all from me, and we are now ready to go. So please join me in welcoming our speakers. And Simone, you can start your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will start sharing. Start my presentation. I think you see it now, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so you already heard a bit about me. My name is Simone, and today I will talk about pet robots in Danish nursing homes. And I chose the sort of snappy title, Technologies of the Future or Cuddly Toys. And as Svetlana already said, I'm part of the DISTINCT project, and it's a Marie Curie innovative training network about technology and dementia, where we're 15 PhD candidates across Europe who work on this topic. And during my PhD, I've also had research stays at the Karolinska Institute, Department of Occupational Therapy, the University of Copenhagen, and Alzheimer Europe, as well as the European Working Group of People with Dementia. So what I talk about today is based on 5 months of ethnographic fieldwork. I did it from September 21 to January 2022. And I went back to Denmark, where I'm originally from, to do the fieldwork in a nursing home for people who live with dementia. The main method is participant observations, but I also did 5 interviews with staff, residents, and some of their family members. I have ethical approval from the ethics committee here in Wittenberge at the university, and all names and places are anonymized. And this is very brief. I could talk for hours about ethics and fieldwork in a nursing home during COVID and people with dementia, but instead I will advertise a bit for the ethics collective of AGENET, who is currently publishing a very interesting special issue about some of these ethical issues when you work ethnographically with people with dementia, which is currently being published in the journal 18 Studies. So nursing home care in Denmark is provided by the municipality as part of the universal Danish welfare model. And assistive technologies have become a very big market in Denmark. We call them welfare technologies. That's also used this term in other Scandinavian countries. And they're seen as very important to the future of care, and the Danish state invests heavily in these technologies, based on a perception that the technologies will both improve elder care, but also make it affordable and sustainable in a welfare state under pressure. Specifically, I look at the pet robots, which are quite common in Danish nursing homes. It's estimated that around 80% of nursing homes have the robot Paro, which you see here, the seal. And the nursing home where I did my fieldwork, they had 3 kinds, the Paro and these cats and dogs that you can also see in the picture. They had Paro since 2007, so for very many years. And they got the cats and dogs in early 2021. And the decision to get these in the nursing home was centrally made by the municipality. So that was sort of the theory, how it would look. But then when I actually arrived in the nursing home, I was expecting to find these cats, dogs, and seal being used or present in some ways that I could interact together with them. I participate in and observe. But what I found was unexpected. I simply could not find the pets anywhere. It took me weeks, and I had to find the especially experienced staff members that was pointed out to me by other staff who could then tell me where to find them in apartments of residents, in the attic, in the neighboring building, in a locked office, in the bathroom. And it turned out that the parvo, they had been two, but one had been washed in the washing machine, unfortunately, and didn't work anymore. And the other one, it didn't work when I tried to turn it off. So my plans changed after a couple of weeks of observing and not finding these. And then I started using the robots myself in the nursing home. So I'll now read out an interview excerpt where a resident talks about the robotic dog. And her name is Annette, I call her. And she says, I think it's very sweet and you almost cannot resist it, but people don't really give it space. I could imagine it's too quick to reject, it's too easy to reject it. But I mean, I do like it. I think it's cute. And I know some people who have a tall dog that's always smiling, right? But it cannot do anything in comparison to Doggy there. And every time you see Doggy, you think to yourself, how incredible it is, right? I mean, the imitation. That is well done or well imitated, or I don't know what to call it. No, it's cute. And then I reply, I've also become fond of it since I walk around with it so much. And she says, yes, I could imagine that. You become fond of it, also because I'm a little curious about that robot thing, a robot dog. What is expected there? Because it's so lifelike, you have to say that too, right? But it's weird that you cast your love on it. So I think Annette, she describes quite clearly how the robotic dog is sweet and it's cute and it's imitating a real puppy quite well, but it's also ambivalent and weird. It's hard to pin down what the robots are, but in some ways I feel like Annette comes very close when she describes it as cute, compares it to a doll, and wonders what expectations follow from it being a robot. So these robots are one of many different objects and aids in the nursing homes. There are real animals that the staff bring with them to work. There are these cuddly toys and other technologies and the dementia dolls, and yeah, you see some of them here. And the pet robots are categorized in very many different ways throughout my fieldwork. Sometimes as real animals, rarely, but sometimes as robots, sensory technologies, plush toys, or dolls. And sometimes I wonder if these fairly simple, technologically also quite simple, the cats and the dogs, may be closer to some of these cuddly toys than to the imaginations we have of robots with artificial intelligence that will take over care tasks for humans. I also experienced that when I came into the nursing home and talked and told I did a project about pet robots, that people then would ask me, that staff would ask me, if it's something they will get in the future, even though they've had these robots since 2007. So they're much more perceived as toys or dolls, whereas robots are seen as something which belongs to the future. So I will now read out a field note excerpt from a conversation I had with two members of staff. I tell them that I found the dog hidden away on top of a cupboard in the corner when I came back. They tell me it may have been put there to protect it, that staff maybe wanted to make sure that it didn't disappear or get damaged. I reply that they may of course be right, but that I don't know if anyone uses it besides me. I tell them that I don't think it works by itself. They tell me that presupposes that there's staff available, but that this is a huge challenge, that they're not enough, and that this will only be worse in the future. The pool of employees is too small, and the pool of those who need help is only getting bigger. So it sucks that it doesn't work without staff. That was the whole point of it, that it should work like that. So it's heavy that it is like that, but we can't hire people. There is no one. So Donna Haraway urges us to stay with the trouble. She argues that it's important to stay in the present and the thick of things, and not only in relation to an imagined future. In many ways, her call to stay with the trouble and avoid oversimplifications and binaries resonates with my findings on pet robots in Danish nursing homes. The questions I received when explaining this research in the field were centered around themes such as effectiveness and taking over the work of humans. Staff, management, and relatives want to know if the robots work, and they want a simple answer to whether or not nursing homes and decision makers should invest in this technology. Social robots are often described as representations of dystopian or utopian futures, depending on people's view of welfare technologies as something that either saves or destroys a welfare state under pressure by replacing humans. Haraway describes a kind of futurism that imagines that things matter only if they work. In many ways, the pet robots do not work as intended by the municipality, but that doesn't mean that they don't matter in the nursing home. As Haraway calls for, we have to remove ourselves from a binary view of the robots as being either solutions or problems. As presented in the beginning, there's a vision of welfare technologies and Danish welfare policies as something that can help provide sustainable care in the future. In many ways, these technologies are seen as what Hicks and Gilead call techno-fixes, solving the challenges of eldercare. When we look at how they came into the nursing home, it was the municipality that originally decided on purchasing and implementing these robots in the nursing home. You can argue how implemented they were, but in many ways, I also became part of this strategy as I chose to work with the robots. My fieldwork shows that the pet robots are not the techno-fixes wished for, providing a solution to the challenges of eldercare, but that they're rather one of many aids available in the nursing home. Futuristic imaginations of robots may even hinder their use as expectations become too high and they fail them. Together with the pet robots, I developed caring relationship with the residents, but this is not something that appeared from the robots alone. Thank you very much. Stop sharing.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, Simone. I would like to invite the audience to ask short, comprehensive questions, if there are some. If no, we can. I don't see any so far. So I think we just move on to Michaela's presentation then.
Yes, did you want to say something, Miguel?
I have a question, but it's not very comprehensive or very straight. So maybe we can keep it for a discussion later.
You decide.
Yeah, the discussion later.
Yes. Yes, so I've asked Simone to share my slide because there's something wrong with my screen sharing. Thank you, Simone. Great. Yes, so Svetlana already gave a short introduction of all of us, but since Simone now introduced herself a bit, I would probably do that too. So my name is Michaela Hellstrand, and I'm a PhD student at the Division of Health Informatics and Logistics at KTH in Stockholm, Sweden. And my background is in social anthropology and in sociology. And this is the title of my PhD project, Challenges for Data-Driven Services in Elderly Care. And I will begin to talk a bit about my PhD project, and this is followed by some methodological reflections. So next slide, please. So I've been working on this PhD project for about 6 months now. So I'm still very much in the early phases of developing what the project will actually be about, more specifically. But what I do know now is that I am interested in how care for older adults gets affected and could potentially become affected by the increased use of health data as a source of knowledge for decision-making around caring interventions. And this approach, in which health data is at the center, is often labeled as a data-driven approach to health. And I situate my research within the context of long-term care for older adults in Sweden. And what I have done so far is to collect 4 months of ethnographic fieldwork with participant observation. And I have also written an article based on this material, which is currently under revision. And this article discusses the potential tensions and contradictions which could occur if a more data-driven approach were to be implemented within the context of long-term care for older adults. And please note that I use the phrase "if a more data-driven approach were to be implemented," That is, it has not been implemented to any extent yet. And I will get back to this and how I tackled this situation methodologically in a short while. Next slide, please. So first of all, what does data-driven services within eldercare mean? Reading through governmental policies and visions presented from industrial stakeholders, the answer to this question is not super clear. But in order to get a clearer picture, it is helpful to trace back a bit and begin by looking at the concepts of data-driven health and health data as it is being discussed and applied within the healthcare sector in general. And here, these concepts are very much on the agenda right now. So to put it simply, data-driven health is an approach to healthcare in which health data is regarded as a resource, which is suggested to help to improve the quality of care, both for the individual at hand, for the individual older adult in this case, but also for the practitioners. And it is emphasized that an accessible and cohesive health data network will enable early indication of needs, so that's early detection, and tailor-made provisions of health services, so personalized medicine and personalized prevention. And while the concept of health data in its broadest definition includes any kind of information about an individual's or a group's health, the definition found within the discourse around data-driven health emphasize the objectively measurable aspects of health, which are often represented in numerical format. And this type of health data primarily answers to the medical aspects of care. Next slide, please. But in the context of long-term care for older adults, quality of care as perceived by the people involved in the everyday context does not only rely on the medical aspects of care, but social care is also a big part. And what my ethnographic material highlights is that caring relations plays a crucial role when it comes to these actors' perceptions of quality of care. And this finding is also supported by a lot of previous research. And already today, health data is being collected in this context, a lot of health data within the medical and social journal. But it is currently not being used in a way which corresponds with the visions around data-driven health. So for social care data, for example, technical and semantic standardization for the sake of interoperability presents a huge challenge, as this type of data is not represented in numerical values, objectively measurable numerical values. There are also a lot of different welfare technologies that have been broadly implemented in the Swedish context. So the most common ones are cameras for, excuse me, digital nightly supervision, and then different type of alarm systems. And while these interventions could be regarded as part of the shift towards working in a more data-driven manner, the health data which gets collected is primarily used for alerting care professionals on emergent incidents, rather than as a source to work with prevention and early detection. So in sum, there's a lot of health data that is already being collected, but it is not being used as a resource for early detection and prevention. And this is how data-driven services are described and defined within the policies and the visions. Next slide, please. So back to the idea of data-driven services within long-term care for older adults. It thus revolves around utilizing certain types of health data collected about an older adult in order to make care more predictive and personalized. And this represents yet another solution to the often mentioned problem of an increasingly aging population combined with a foreseen lack of care staff. However, in these policies and visions, exactly how data-driven services and what kind of data-driven services that they envision to be implemented within elder care, it's not specified to any extent. And this makes it a bit tricky to investigate, but I will get back to that too. There are a few examples of data-driven services that are in the loop and that are being discussed within these policies and visions. And two of these are predictive modeling for fall prevention and AI solutions for assessing the relative risk of disease. But to be clear, these have not been tested, definitely not implemented, but not tested in Sweden, at least in a real world environment, so to say. New slide, please. So, as an anthropologist being used to conducting ethnographic fieldwork, I was a bit confused about how to tackle this situation. And first I thought that maybe I should just leave it for now and wait to see when and if data-driven services enter this context of long-term care for older adults in Sweden. That would make the task of conducting fieldwork, investigating its influence on the everyday care context a bit easier, at least more familiar to me. And there already exists, as you probably know, a lot of great social scientific research doing just that, investigating the interplay between technology and the wider social material environment as it unfolds. There are other methods as well, of course, that I thought about or at least considered. And some examples are participatory design, and others have studied policy documents, industrial visions, and so on, and interviewed target groups and asked them about their perspective on these emerging technologies. I did neither of those. One thing that I find really interesting, but also quite disturbing, which I'm sure that many of you can relate to, is that these narratives of emerging technologies are presented as a solution to the problem of an increasing amount of older adults to take care of. But there's very much focus on the problem and not so much focus on what is already working well within these contexts. And I'm interested in how technology or data-driven services specifically can support the everyday care work in a way which strengthens that which is already working well. And in particular, that which is already contributing to quality of care from the perspective of the older adults and care professionals whose everyday life takes place within these contexts. So what I did was that I spent 4 months at a nursing home here in Sweden, trying to get a better understanding of how older adults and care professionals related to the idea of quality of care, what it meant for them, and how this manifested itself in practice. And as mentioned, I found that the relationships which were developed both between residents and the care staff had a crucial influence on their experience of quality of care. And this is what my article mainly discusses, how these relational aspects of care could potentially become affected by an increased use of data-driven services. And the article also highlights that the quality of care is a very complex concept, which can mean a lot of different things depending on whose perspective we're talking about. So this meant that I had to speculate, viewing my ethnographic material through the lens of governmental policies and industrial visions, those that were available. And this was a totally new approach to me. And in one way, it felt a bit wrong, maybe even not very scientific in the beginning. But now that a few months have passed since I did my fieldwork, and I've also written the article, I have contended that this is one way to do it. But this is exactly what I would like to discuss today. I would like to hear your thoughts and experiences if you've faced similar situations and how you've handled that, the pros and cons and so on. Final slide, which only says, thanks for listening. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks a lot, Michaela, for your presentation. Great, very interesting. If there are any questions, Umnila Karadkar, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for a really fascinating presentation. I come at this from a data-centered perspective, in that I am a computer scientist trained as a data management person. And so still new to the health and care side of things. Do you have any sense of why such services, although promised, haven't yet been implemented? What might be the hurdles to this? And do they have a projected horizon when such services might actually be implemented? And then the background for my question is that it's very easy to make promises in the abstract, and then people support promises in the abstract. But when we start to pin down things and we say this will happen, public support suddenly goes against that specific implementation. So I'm wondering if you've seen anything like that, or if there is an alternate hypothesis.
Thanks a lot for interesting questions. I remember the first two, but the last you might have to repeat. Yes, so a horizon for this to actually be implemented, no. Everything is still really vague.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it has not been implemented within elderly care to the same extent as it has been implemented in the healthcare sector more broadly in Sweden. It's a bit crude to say this, but my guess is that elderly care or elder care is not the top priority for these type of expensive interventions. That is often the case, even though now with the demographics changes and so on, elder care has been more in the limelight, so to say. But I think this data-driven approach to health for the healthcare sector in general is a lot about, and I could talk, like Simona said, I could talk about this forever, so I will make it really short. It's not only about improving the quality for the care for the individual patient and making the job easier for the practitioners. It also has a lot to do with making the system as a whole sustainable. So keeping within the boundaries of the resources that are available for the healthcare system. So I would say that for elder care, it's the same thing there. It's not top priority. The healthcare sector at large is an even bigger problem than the increasing aging population. That's a guess, an educated guess, I would say. And the last question, or there was one more question in there, right?
It was more a hypothesis that people, whether it's patient, whether it's families of older people, support data-driven anything in abstract, but they don't always support a specific instantiation of such a data-driven intervention. Yes,
yeah, and that's for the future to tell, I would say. And I think that's also why I think long-term care for older adults is very interesting, because I mean, social care is a part of any kind of care. It's not just the medical care, but any kind of healthcare context contains social care too. But long-term care for older adults, once again, a bit crude. Prevention and prediction are not top priority there either, because in Sweden, at least, the people who are admitted to long-term care facilities, the prospects for them to be cured and to become better is not that good, because they're already in quite bad shape and they're very old. That answers the other question I realize now, why it's not prioritized. Because this is not target group for prediction and prevention. Could be, but yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, we're still very good on time actually. So Miguel, this is now your turn.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, very good.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name is Miguel Gómez Hernández, and I will present to you future aging technologies, homes, ethnographies of industry and people's imaginations. So I'm part of the Emerging Technologies Research Lab, which is in Monash University. It's led by Sarah Pink, my supervisor, and as you will see in the coming presentations, it has had a big influence on my current research. So this is a picture I took in the airport of Melbourne. This is an aged care provider that is connecting trust and is talking about the future where you are expected to be aging, and in a business-oriented context. So talking about the context, which again can be, this is the context of my research, but it can be applied in other areas. So I'm researching industry. And an industry in aging, they have a growing interest in biomedical technologies, solving one problem, which is aging. They solve it through one possible future, which is often based on technology, and portraying and employing some narratives such as successful aging, which I find problematic. And again, they are usually quite optimistic about the technology. Anthropology, which is my discipline, I think is pretty good at holistically understanding technology in general, and specifically age tech, aging technology, because it's able to deliver ethnographic foresights that contest and problematize dominant narratives. So my research is, I research futures through three lenses, looking into people, industry, everyday, and aging technologies. For example, this is an industry narrative that, in anthropology, we usually focus on that, from one big consultancy, which is Deloitte. And Deloitte is in one of the reports they made predicting future technologies for older people. They talk, they are trying to portray an older persona, which is a design technique that tries to represent a certain group of people. So they say, Larry, who is an older person, he lost his wife. His wife was the epicenter of his health, cooking and doing everything for him. His life now is boring and he's missing his wife. And he's longing for the intellectual challenges that work brought him, because as you know, work is the only place where you can have intellectual challenges. So I think this is a quite problematic representation of older persons, and coming from the industry. So you probably know in anthropology, for us is very important theories and concepts as useful tools to interpret our empirical data. Some of the theories you can use in your research looking into futures can be sociology of expectations, futures anthropology, and socio-technical imaginaries, which is within the science and technology studies framework. And I think they are useful to interpret futures. Then I use other concepts such as trust, technologies of the imagination, hope, and others that I will not delve into because of lack of time in this presentation. So one possible way to study industry futures is, for example, you can have interviews with them, you can have ethnographic encounters, but you can also research reports. I did it looking into reports that unfold, that anticipate future aging technologies. So some of the technologies they are predicting that will come is the smart home, a lot of sensors, voice assistants such as smart speakers, e-health technology like wearables, mobile apps, and others, driverless cars, and finance technology, mobile banking, biometric payments, and social technologies such as conversational artificial intelligence. So these are the technologies predicted by them. Again, in anthropology, we focus on the narratives in the way they portray and describe technologies. So for the industry in age tech, aging in place is a norm. It's something you pursue. You cannot rely on residential aged care, and you should become old in your own home, not relying on the taxpayers. Because, first of all, there is a shrinking and reducing aged care staff, and they see technology coming to replace the aged care workforce. Also, they see the pandemic as the main catalyst for technology adoption. And they, as it seems obvious for them, aging is an economic burden to the taxpayer. So another way to study futures, for example, it can be by means of comic strips that I developed based on the review of industry reports. So these comic strips can be used in interviews and ethnographies to elicit discussions on imaginations, to stimulate discussions on futures. I, for example, use it with 18 age tech professionals. One of these comic strips is a utopian scenario where an older person is happily arriving home because he is able to switch on his heating through his smartwatch. Then he also has a driverless car that avoids accidents in snowy days, and he has a snow sweeper that allows safe walks, so your caregivers don't need to worry. Then, on the contrary, a dystopian scenario, an older person is a bit angry because he has a robot making his lunch for him, low-fat meal, and he's able to control the stove. He has a camera in the kitchen, he has a fall detector rack that detects whether you fall or not, and a smart fridge that will tell you how many times you open it and the calories you consume. So again, these are dystopian scenarios, but the technologies are based on the review of reports I mentioned before. So if you want more participatory approaches on top of interviews, so I would suggest employing ethnographies of futures. For example, some of the questions you can ask is, how will technologies evolve? Why? And what are those sensory futures? How they are sensed and felt, anticipated by the participants. Another way is to film invisible everyday activities that are happening now, are happening in the mundane space that is often implicit, and that elicit discussions on futures. For example, how will your home adapt to the future? How do you think will you change your stairs, or how will the landscape change according to the participant? You can also bring materials such as comic, devices, or anything that stimulate discussions on futures, and also innovate a little bit the traditional ethnographic qualitative techniques such as interviews. So just to sum up, the main takeaways from this presentation is, first of all, reports. I believe they are a relevant space to look into, in addition to academic literature, because industry is a key player, and industry usually anticipate futures through publicly available reports, sometimes not. Also, if you are having interviews or any ethnographic encounter with people, I think it would be good if you bring devices, because it stimulates imagination, it stimulates future discussions. for example, via comics or anything. Also, I believe anthropology is quite good at theories and concepts, and I think we should be proud of that because these concepts are often simplified in industry disciplines such as engineering, human-computer interaction, computer science, and others. And in this way, we are able to deepen and explain, for example, what trust is, what future is for the participants, or for anyone, or depending on the discipline, or for example, what imagination is. Also, I would suggest doing video filming tours that over traditional qualitative techniques such as interviews, surveys, or participant observation. So that's all on my end. This is a beautiful picture I found online, and I wanted to wrap up my presentation with this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Miguel, for sharing your insights about perceptions of old age in the industry and also stimulating ideas of how to work and elicit ideas about the future with research participants. So we have some time for follow-up questions. Michaela, yes.
Yes, if no one else wants to, I will jump in. This, like you said, Miguel, this is maybe also a question that is a bit too large to discuss in this 2-3 minutes forum that we have now, but just wanted to hear very briefly, because it was interesting that your presentation followed my presentation, because I kind of asked, okay, yeah, what are the methods and that you could use and so on, but I would just like to hear very quickly how do you relate to my methodological reflections that I had at the end, because you also mentioned participatory design kind of, and the things that I brought up too, but in the case for me where yeah, no, I will not make it more complicated. What's your reflection on my presentation?
Can you remind me your main conclusion about that so I can?
Yeah, no worries. No, how I choose to tackle the non-existing technology, just existing envisions and methodologically, the way that I did ethnographic fieldwork and how I viewed my findings through the lens of these reports and these policies and so on.
Yes. Thank you, Michaela. So, well, I believe is I think if I heard before well, you were afraid of not being scientific enough, looking into futures, and I think you shouldn't be because that's because also I mean what it used to exist. What it is existing now, it doesn't mean that it's more scientific or more real than what can be in the future, because things are changing, things are moving,
Yeah.
So, for example, you can do it with simple questions such as, how do you imagine the future? How do you speculate this will be? And I know this is a bit controversial because in some traditional design spaces, asking someone to give you a design, to give you a specific technology is not their job. It's the designer's job to propose that according to their needs and whatever. So I believe I disagree with that. I think participants are fully, are welcome to speculate, to imagine things, and to imagine scenarios by having conversations with them, by asking simple questions. Yes, and also, I think also on top of that, having a review of reports or having a review of speculated technologies is also real, because it might happen or not, but what was in the past has changed as well till now. So it's not more scientific than the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's just I keep coming back to the concept of like power here as well. Like my findings, who are they going to have any impact on Sweden's national life science strategy, you know, that the government has set? I understand what you're saying, but I also feel very like there's no, I don't know where to grasp kind of with my insights. They're like in a, you know, out in space, and who's gonna care?
Well, I mean, that's what consultancies are doing all the time. So don't worry, because I guess, well, I believe that with a PhD, you are able to provide more scientific and more valid data. And for example, you can inform, well, governments love predictions about future data-driven technologies in homes, technologies in aged care, robots. Maybe you can inform them, let them know what people want, what people imagine. And I would say is very valid, you know, as in addition to future through to ethnographies that focus on the present or past.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope you're right. We'll see.
Okay, thank you for your contributions. I would like